When this pandemic started, I think, like many of you, I was concerned and worried. This was going to disrupt our lives, and more importantly, people have and will continue to die. It's a difficult time. It's a difficult time for all of us. It's a difficult situation to be in. But then I stopped and thought about the situation. And I thought, there's actually an opportunity here. I suspect I, like many of you, have been frankly tired and exhausted. And I saw this time as an opportunity for rest. And what better to do in rest than to connect with God? So really what I saw this time as an opportunity for this global Sabbath rest, where we could all take a step back, look at ourselves a little bit more, and connect further with God without any other distractions. Now, the reality of the world around us is unfortunately much different. One of the concerning things I have seen in the news and in other postings is all these vacation places, all these resorts, who have wisely enacted certain procedures to protect not only their staff, but the people coming to visit them. But unfortunately, this has not always been met with the appreciation that it should have been. There are people who have assaulted these staff members for trying to enact these rules and regulations. And some have even gone to doing not just what we normally think of as assault, but one of the worst ways of assault at this time of a global pandemic, spitting in their faces. In this time that should have brought us all together, because we are all experiencing the same thing. This time instead has shown to us once again the deep racial divide that we have in this country, as the last words of George Floyd, when he died yet another victim of racist violence, was, "I can't breathe." You think even these events that happened around would bring us all together. And maybe there's hope that it still can. But it also seems like we are more divided as a nation and a world than we were before. And we were pretty divided as a nation and a world to begin with. And to top this all off, one of the things that I saw this weekend that happened right in the area that I grew up, right in the greater Hoover, Birmingham area, once again, there was a shooting at the River Chase Galleria Mall. Now, all these things, all these terrible things, none of us wanted these things to happen. And I hope that the people who have perpetuated the racism, the violence, the division, I hope at least in their heart of hearts that they didn't want to do these things. But certainly we didn't want these things to happen. Certainly we wanted things to be better. And if we take a deep look at ourselves, if you just stop for a moment and think back to the beginning of this pandemic, think back through your actions throughout this time. And you may find that you yourself have not always done the right thing. You've not always acted the way in which you wanted to. And if you can't say that, I can say that for myself. Looking back, I have not always acted the way I wanted to. I've not always acted in the way that I think I should have. Now, our hope in this is that Paul's words today, Paul's words say something to his time that speaks to us in ours. Paul talks about this divide within ourselves, this divide within himself, that he often does things that he doesn't want to do, that he didn't want to do. There's this war within himself, this war between what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do. And oftentimes, that part of him that does those things he doesn't want to do wins out, just as it does with us. So what's our hope in a situation like this? What's our hope in these times? It comes from Paul's final word in our reading from Romans today. It comes in his words when he says, "Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord." Only Jesus and his saving grace can tear us away from these parts of ourselves that do these things which we don't want to do. These parts of us that lead to sin and death. Only Jesus rescuing us can help us to once again do those things that we want to do instead of the things that we don't want to do. This is the truth that I have personally found in my own life and in my ministry as well. When I don't take the time to develop my relationship with God and with Jesus, when I don't take that time to be present with our Lord, I find myself slipping into these old ways. I find myself getting upset, frustrated, angry at others, at myself, and yes, sometimes even at God. But when I do take the time, when I take the time to really develop and build up that relationship with God, what happens is something very different. Because all of a sudden, once again, I'm able to do those things which I want to do. I'm able to be that person that I want to be. And that's not because I'm the one that's doing those things. It's not because it has anything to do with me. But it's because I'm finally listening and finally allowing God, Jesus, to be the driving force behind my actions. To let God do those things instead of me. This is why it's so important for those of us who are in ministry to take time. To take time to be present with God. To take time actively and regularly to retreat away from it all and to build up our relationship with the Lord. That's something that isn't just for something for those in ministry, whether lay or ordained, to do. Taking time to be present with God is something that I hope you all will consider doing, that you all set aside time whenever it is that you can to do that very thing. It doesn't have to be every day. Doesn't have to be every week, but it does help if you do it every month at least, to take that time to be present with our Lord. In this time of pandemic, coming back to God is very important. Letting Jesus guide us and guide our actions is vital. It lets us move away from this part of ourselves that leads to sin and death, that leads to doing those things that we don't want to do, and leads us back to doing those things which we do want to do. And that's something that I've seen in the midst of all the horrors that we've seen out there. I've also seen people wanting to do this too. I've seen hope that in the midst of all the horrors we see in the world right now, that people are taking this opportunity and do want to take the time to become closer to Jesus. I saw this at my time at Resurrection, where Rochelle is now, when we started in this pandemic. Looking back on those for that very first video, I believe we had about 600 people that had viewed that, last that I saw. That is double Resurrection's baptized members. And it's well over the normal Sunday attendance. All these people are taking this opportunity to be with us online. They're taking this opportunity in this time of uncertainty, of confusion, of death, to really search out for Jesus, to really want to be in a relationship with Him. If you found yourself in this time behaving in a way which you would rather not, don't fear. Just renew and restore your relationship with Jesus. That voice that leads us to do those things that we don't want to do, as we see in Paul and as we see in our own lives, does unfortunately remain. But with Jesus, there's hope that we can be more like the people that we actually want to be. There is hope that with Jesus, we can finally actually act in the way that we want to.